Hi, welcome to Transparency in Government. We're glad that you're joining us today. As we have done monthly in the past, we have our town manager, Kevin Smith, with us today. And he has brought with him our police chief, William Hart. And Kevin, would you like to say a few things about Mr. Hart before we turn things over to him?
No, I didn't think it was going to be that type of show. Go ahead.
That being said, no, this is it's a pleasure to have Chief Hart joining us today. We've had a number of the department heads over the last year, really, join us on this particular show, and I still, kind of feel like I owe a debt of gratitude to the chief for having set it up for me when I came in last August of 2013. Of course, the chief served the town very well as both acting town manager and as chief of police for about a year.
It was some good acting.
Exactly right.
Dottie, you said it, not me, so score for you. But that being said, I know he's got a lot to talk about with the police department, and so I'll turn it over to him and let him give us an update on how things are at the PD.
What's happening?
Kevin, thanks for the time to be here. We do have a lot going on. While some things might seem more important, seems to me the most important thing is we've kind of begun a transition in leadership with some recent promotions. Chris Gandia, who served the last 3.5 years as services lieutenant, was promoted to captain in the wake of Captain Bob Michaud's retirement. Bob was with Londonderry since 1996, and the last 4 years he served as the division commander in services as a captain. Outstanding guy. He'll definitely be missed, but one of the great things about the police department that serves the people here in Londonderry is that we've got a great leadership development program, and Chris will do an outstanding job. And indeed, on his first week on the job as services commander, kind of took the bull by the horns and laid out some strategic planning for the division, and done a great job. As well, that movement creates other movement. So when Chris moved up, Lieutenant Kim Bernard was promoted from detective sergeant. And with that promotion, we made a change with one of our sergeants, Sean Doyle, who's been a detective for 4 or 5 years, took over stripes as a sergeant. So it's the beginning of change in our police department, and I think it's good change for the community.
That's great. You talked about good leadership that goes on during these transitions. Is there anything particular you can tell us about how that works? Do they do any shadowing? Do they? How does that come to pass?
Sure can, and happy to do so. We don't view the leadership development as something that happens when there's a transition.
That's what I was thinking.
Rather, it's simply a part of who we are. We're always developing those individuals who take on the responsibilities of leadership. We do it in a variety of ways. The foundational way is through our Leadership Academy, which is a program that every officer participates in that begins with their hiring.
And I've heard good things about that program.
Well, thank you. It's good to hear. What happens is that at each level, we spend years preparing those folks to take on the responsibilities that they'll have at the next level. The idea is really that every single police officer is a leader within the community, since when they're called upon to help folks solve a problem, they're going to be required in almost every instance to exercise leadership that will have an impact on the folks who are involved. So we take it pretty seriously, and we try to expose folks as they rise through the various levels of responsibility to all the aspects of any kind of an organizational structure, to include budget preparation, budget responsibility, investigative responsibility from an internal perspective, handling criticism or complaints from outside. So there's a lot of different ways we prepare people for that time when they're going to be called upon to exercise their responsibilities.
And it sounds like that's a process that would give them a great deal of empowerment. as well as some pride that they can take, that they're able to follow through on those things on
That's
their
exactly right. At each level, the idea is that you go ahead and exercise the responsibility, knowing that somebody's going to be there to assist you when a challenging time comes. You know, the reality of any kind of organizational development, but also personal development, is we really don't learn anything from success. Failure, on the other hand, is a keen teacher.
I'm so smart. And is there anything in particular that the department is sort of focusing on right now, or?
Well, right now we're in the middle of budget season, and our number one priority from a budget perspective this year is we want to get back to 3 school resource officers. And while alone that's an important growth objective, the change in law with regard to juveniles makes that really even more imperative, because the law contemplates that school resource officers are going to have increased responsibilities. Interestingly enough, it's stuff we already do and we've done for a long time. The law will require that the SRO look to mitigate the possibility of court action or arrest action by working with parents, working with school officials prior to getting to that place. That's something we do now and have done for a long time.
Yeah, I'm totally aware that you've always done that. I think that's great. And you said to get back to 3 SROs.
Right.
When was the last time we had 3?
2008.
I thought it was quite a while ago.
Yeah, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
We had 4 at that time. And then, of course, there was the challenging times of the Great Recession that had an impact here in Londonderry almost exclusively through the budget process.
Yes.
But it had an impact nonetheless, and so we went back to 1, and 2 years ago the people made a determination that 2 was an appropriate number, and it's my recommendation, you know, based on my experience with this, that 3 is an optimal number for us. I think 4 is not appropriate given the reduction in school population, both staff, teachers, and students.
Yeah. Sounds good.
And Chief, the 2 that we currently have are stationed where?
We have a full-time officer stationed at the high school, and that will continue. We view the high school as sort of the fulcrum point for our whole school resource officer operation. Currently, we have an officer also locused at the middle school, but that person also travels throughout the elementary schools and from time to time the kindergarten. The idea is that if the 3rd person is approved by the folks who live here in Londonderry, that what we'll do is have that person be focused on the grammar schools and kindergarten. And then, of course, to the extent somebody has a family problem or vacation or whatever it may be, they'll move up so to make sure that the high school is always covered.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, and you know, going back just to the promotions for a second, one of the things that the Chief didn't mention, but I'll mention for him, is you know, he and his command staff really have done a phenomenal job of preparing these folks to come into these positions. You talked about the leadership, but it starts at the top.
At the leadership.
And developing that plan to say, okay, let's make sure we have a good internal candidate pool that can move into these positions and have succession planning so that we don't have to go to the outside to seek the next captain, to seek the next chief, to seek the next lieutenant, and so forth. And that's, I think, just speaks volumes to the leadership that's at the police department.
Hit the ground running, smooth transitions.
Right.
Happy
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah.
Well, the person who did that really was Joe Ryan, who developed that program. You know, Joe took over at a challenging time for the agency, and with a lot of thoughtful direction and a real keen sense of the relationship the police department had with the community, was able to put these programs in place. And you know what, I'm lucky to be a caretaker and someday turn it over to somebody else who can continue the good work Joe did.
That's good to hear. I hope he watches,
I hope so too.
because we did appreciate him and we told him when he was
Well,
here.
he did pay me that $50 to make
Oh,
it.
that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
And of course, the PD was very busy recently with the winter storm as well. I'm sure you got a lot of calls.
Were
Yeah,
there a
during
lot of
that time.
accidents in town over that period?
You know, interestingly enough, there weren't as many as you might think. You know, one of the good things about good weather reporting and PSNH being kind of on top of it with regard to their communication was that people pretty much stayed home. You also had the issue of a holiday. People traveled to, but when they got to, they stayed.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a time when folks are on their way to or from work, which is very challenging. The guys did a great job, you know, and working with the fire department, who also did a great job, and other service providers in the town like DPW. You know what, we are very lucky to have the kind of folks who are able to get us through these challenging weather situations and other things too that you know, give us some challenge.
And that kind of segues very nicely into how we fared with the storm as far as the town was concerned, in addition to the police department.
Yeah.
I know that my power went out Wednesday night at midnight. Is that Thursday morning at 12 a.m.? It's always the same, but I don't know which way you say it.
Thursday morning at that point.
Yeah, so at 12, whatever, in the dark on Wednesday, I went really in the dark. And my power came on again about mid-afternoon on Saturday. And I think if this had been the situation several years ago when we had that really bad storm, I would have been out easily for a week. I have to say, you know, I think PSNH did a phenomenal job.
The response time has gotten a lot better. This was the 4th worst power outage in New Hampshire's history. It's kind of interesting. The 5 top power outages in the state's history have all come within the last 6 years, which is pretty remarkable. Yeah. The biggest, of course, was the ice storm back in 2008. The Halloween storm is up there as well, but this was the 4th largest, I believe, after Hurricane Irene, or maybe Irene was the 5th. But nonetheless, the response time, given that it was the 4th largest one, the response time was considerably better than it's been in the last storms when we've had multi-day power outages.
And they were more in touch with the customers too. They did get back to you if there was a way to get back to you.
Yeah, they were in touch with the customers quite a bit. They were in touch with the municipal officials all throughout the storm, keeping us updated.
They answered the phone very pleasantly and gave you an update.
It's always important. And you know, part of it is, you know, obviously they're prepared for what they had to do. They knew it was coming. But the other thing, in terms of the outage maybe not being as bad as it could have been, is there's, of course, a lot of tree trimming that's done now in the summer.
Yes.
And I know people love their trees. I love my trees too, but it's important.
We have a small dog in the studio. That was not a person. Okay.
We don't want people to think it's Al Sipek barking from the back window, right? Glad you clarified that for everyone, Dottie. So, but the tree trimming is important, and it's important to allow them to trim the trees around the wires when they come around in the summer. And the other thing is that they've put a lot of money into repairing infrastructure and making it more durable. And so these things went a long way into, one, keeping more people with power through the storm, but two, giving access to making it easier to be able to repair the lines.
And I think we have to, Chief Hart, you may know what I'm talking about here. I think we have to put some of the credit for that, in Londonderry at least, on the town council, because after previous storms, they pretty much read the riot act to PSNH about making sure that we got online faster and that they did what they needed to do to prepare ahead of time and be proactive. I also noticed this time that right after the storm, I'm hearing this ungodly noise outside my window, and I looked out, and the PSNH people were out there. How do you pronounce that? ASP?
Esplenda.
Esplenda, okay. Those people, I didn't want to say it wrong, those people were outside my window, and they were feeding in all the downed branches.
Yeah.
So they're cleaning up fast too. So
yeah, they again, you know, kudos to them, and hats off to them for being, I think, remarkably responsive. I think it was Friday night, I got a call from Senator Carson, who had told me that the folks up in the Parish Hills area, which is the adult community, were still without power, and she was very concerned about it. And so I called Liz LaRocca, who's our PSNH contact in town. And literally within 15 minutes, their crews were at Parish Hills restoring power over there. So, again, hats off to them and to the PD, the fire department, DPW, everybody did a remarkable job. And, all the complaints you had in the past about how come it took so long, you didn't get that this time.
And did we have a shelter open?
We did. We did open the
Because
shelter.
I had left town, so I don't know what happened.
We did open it for about 24 hours,
Okay.
mainly to assist a lot of the folks in Derry
Yes,
who were without
yeah.
power. And the town of Derry was extremely appreciative of us doing that. I think we maybe had a dozen folks who stayed there overnight for the one night it was open. But we wanted, that's another thing, we wanted to be proactive in our approach. We didn't wait until the demand became too high. We just said, you know what, this is the right thing to do. It's a multi-day event. Let's open it up. And again, that goes back to also thanking another group of folks, and that is the Volunteers with Alert.
Yes, oh,
Who
absolutely.
helped staff the warming shelter. So all in all, it was unfortunate it happened when it happened, but at the same time, the response was really good.
Yeah, and I think some people kind of enjoyed the pioneer aspect of it. Like, how do we cook this turkey? What are we going to do with all these
We
people?
really got
there
to
were
live like the
some-
pilgrims.
Yeah, we did. So it was a little bit fun on some levels, but hopefully that won't happen for Christmas.
It's always fun for about a day.
Yeah.
And then you quickly want to go back to 2014.
Okay. Talk about some of the things that I know people are thinking about these days. The gas pipeline, is that going to be a hot issue for Londonderry?
I don't anticipate it being a hot issue in that we already have one natural gas pipeline that goes
We do.
Through a significant portion of town to the Granite Ridge Power Plant.
And we've had no real problems with that pipeline that I can recall.
Not to my knowledge either, yeah.
Yeah, so that would bode well.
Typically, when any type of these energy infrastructure projects, if it's above ground, that's when you usually get a lot of the where's this going to be,
yeah.
what's it going to do to the
Can
skyline.
I see it from my house? Yeah.
When it's below ground, kind of out of sight, out of mind, there isn't as much controversy about it. That being said, their proposed route does take it through Londonderry, and I met with officials from Kinder Morgan earlier this week. Their plan is to come make a public presentation before the town council at one of the meetings in January.
In January, okay.
There's, I want to say a dozen or so towns, maybe more than that the pipeline goes through in New Hampshire, though it's a very small portion of Londonderry, I should mention as well. When people finally see the map, they'll see it's not a very large swath of Londonderry that the pipeline goes through. That being said, the whole reason for it is we have such a reliance upon natural gas energy in both New Hampshire and in New England now.
Yeah.
And you also have a number of power plants that are going offline, Vermont Yankee being one of them. I think the coal power plant in Bow is scheduled to go offline in a few years. And the more that happens and the less diversified we are in where we're getting our energy from, the higher our reliance on natural gas goes up.
Right.
And natural gas prices in New England are extremely high. Meanwhile, over in Pennsylvania, where they're digging it out of the ground, it's dirt cheap down there. So the question is, how do you get it from there to New England so that we have more of it up here at a lower cost? And that's what this project does.
Okay.
It runs between a 30 and 36 foot pipe from Pennsylvania through New York, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and goes a little bit into Maine as well. And the whole purpose of that is to bring more natural gas to the area and lower our energy prices.
So if
here.
people want to follow this, they should maybe watch the website and see when it's going to be on the agenda for the town council?
It'll either be the January 5th meeting or the one after that, which I think is around January 20th, but whatever that second or third Monday is in the month, they will be presenting on that. And of course, if it were to happen, Londonderry would also get tax receipt dollars from the pipeline as well. We're able to tax the
Always a good
infrastructure.
thing, yeah.
So it's more revenue coming into the town that isn't on the local property taxpayers.
Okay. Now, will people have an opportunity to speak at that meeting, ask questions, or will there be
I
a
don't know
hearing
if-
at some other time that
Yeah, I don't know
does
if
that?
they'll have the opportunity at that particular meeting because it'll be during the public comment section. Of course, anyone can
And-
get up during
yeah.
public comment. But this is the very, very early stages.
Okay.
If this whole thing went through, it wouldn't be built, I think, until they said 2017 or 2018. So there'll be a lot of time for public comment going forward in the future on this.
Okay.
But there's two major, I guess, energy infrastructure projects right now being proposed. One is the gas pipeline, and the other one is a transmission project that PSNH is proposing from Londonderry down to Tewksbury, which they came in and talked about at a recent town council meeting about that as well. They're competing with another energy company on where to put the transmission line, and sometime, I think ISO New England, in sometime in January, is supposed to make a determination on which project gets to go forward.
Okay. Sounds good. There's not
It's probably
so many
more in
things.
energy than you ever wanted to hear about, but it's a hot button issue,
Yeah.
especially, like I said, in New England, we have some of the highest energy prices in the country here.
I want to talk to you about Stonehenge, the workforce housing.
Yep.
This is my question, okay? Because when I looked at it and I saw that the developer was thinking around $1,400 a month for rent, I thought, wow, that's a much better paid workforce than I remember. And when I was a kid, I remember my parents teaching me and telling me that the model was when you get a home, whether you're renting or you're buying, it should not exceed a quarter of your income, which sounded like pretty good advice, and I did follow that. But when I looked at the $1,400 a month rent, that's a lot of money. And if you do it over the course of a quarter of their income, it would mean they'd need to be get paid about $35 an hour for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And the same thing, if you go up to 1/3, it comes out to $26. And if you go to, okay, it's half my income, which I don't know how I'm going to pay my other bills and feed my kids, but at half my income, it's still $1,750. Now, that's great. That seems to me like a market that we should have affordable housing if that's what they have. But are we ever going to, or do we have now some affordable housing maybe for entry-level people or people who basically keep us alive by running some of the services that we have for much less than that?
Not in the way you probably think of affordable housing.
Okay.
So the workforce housing is considered affordable housing. The way it works is that your income cannot exceed a certain level. It's capped
Okay.
at a particular level.
Okay.
And if you're below that level, you qualify for the workforce housing. You have to be working. But the rent is also capped. Londonderry falls into Rockingham County.
Right.
The rent levels in Rockingham County are the highest in the entire state because of its demographics and the income levels in Rockingham County. And so the minimum it's capped at is $1,400, which
Okay.
by most accounts is not what you would consider,
yeah.
most people would consider to be affordable.
Yeah.
And so it's designed for entry level. And part of the reason we have a lot of the workforce housing coming into Londonderry is because as part of the last master plan process, one of the things that came out of it was the need for more diversified housing in Londonderry, both for younger people and older people as well. Folks who either can't afford a single family home right out of college or high school, and folks who don't want to stay in a single family home once the kids have moved out and they want to downsize. And so we're starting to see more workforce housing coming in to try to give more diversified housing for people that can afford those rents and don't want to.
So are you saying, Susie,
Yeah.
interrupting, are you saying then that the workforce housing and the numbers that we're trying to aspire to are not necessarily just considering Londonderry, they're considering the county?
Yes.
Okay.
They consider a region.
That was something that I had not been aware of.
They
Okay.
consider a region, not just the town itself.
Okay.
If you were to go further north into the state or into the western areas, you'd
It'd be
see
different.
those rent numbers coming down. Further you go east over to the seacoast, the more you're going to
Yeah.
start seeing them going up.
Okay. That
and-
makes a lot more sense to me now, if that's the case.
Yeah, and we also have, there's a project that's been, I don't think it's had final approval from the planning board yet, but it's going through the process, and that is elderly apartments, which are going right in between around Button Drive, the land in between Avandi's and Cafe Teresa. There's a proposed elderly apartment complex there, 3 different buildings, and then assisted living going right in front of it. But even those rents, again, are fairly steep, $1,300 to $1,400.
Yeah.
And so there's been folks, especially at the senior center, who've said, "How about real affordable housing for seniors?"
There's a lot of seniors that are only getting $1,400 total
right.
in a month, if that.
Right. And so myself and Kathy Blash, who's the senior affairs director, and some of our reps in town have been talking to developers who have done this in other parts of the state, where they get tax credits from the federal government to build what we know is more affordable housing, especially for seniors, so that they can stay in Londonderry once they're on a fixed income. Which
And why do they call it fixed?
well, right.
When it's so broke.
But anyway, so that's to hear workforce housing and affordable housing, but then you see the price of the rent. It's you kind of raise an eyebrow and go, "Wow,
well, I have a
how
better
affordable
understanding
is it?"
now.
But that is why it's all broken down by a formula as to what the rent levels have to be capped at.
Okay.
Yeah.
That definitely clears things up for me. I hope
Sure.
it does for anybody else who might have had the question.
And you can see some of these workforce housing units are currently under construction along Mammoth Road, right around Trail Haven, across from Mountain Home Estates. I'm sure people have driven by and they see
the development,
the multi-units.
Yeah.
Those are workforce housing condominiums, and they're I've seen their work in other towns. They do a really nice job, and
Good.
I think people will be happy with them once they're completed.
That's good. I'm glad you went and looked.
Absolutely.
Okay, we've got something else on the table here, zoning
Yes.
and the ordinances. It's come to everybody's attention, probably some people knew this forever,
Yeah.
but from 1963 to now, we've never had a rewrite?
Never had a
We just
rewrite.
keep adding amendments?
We
Doesn't
do.
that sound like the national government?
Yeah, so now our zoning book is like this.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, and it's full of contradictions.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to wade through if you're a developer coming into town.
It's hard enough to follow an ordinance, let alone an ordinance with all of those
Right.
amendments.
Right,
Which
yeah.
I'm sure are very contradictory.
And, you shouldn't have as many requests maybe as we get through the ZBA, which, those are people that are looking for variances from our zoning restrictions. If we're constantly seeing the same things going through the ZBA, you have to start to say, okay, is our zoning code written correctly that so many people have to keep going to trying to get variances, especially if the variances are being granted. So a couple of years ago, the voters approved a zoning code audit, which was we had a consultant come in, looked at our entire code and said, okay, this is how you can simplify it going forward. And that's what they've done in this latest report.
And there's going to be a cost associated with that, of course. There always is.
And that part's been paid for.
Oh,
that part's been paid for already. The audit's been paid for. It was completed.
Right, but the rewrite.
The rewrite will have a cost as well. Probably somewhere, give or take, over $100,000, maybe $110,000.
Wow.
Because it's again, we haven't had a rewrite
Basically
since the 1960s.
starting from zero.
Yeah.
To put everything in its place.
Right, but it's worth it because, as I said, it simplifies our entire zoning code for developers, makes the process less cumbersome, streamlines the process.
Yeah.
Certainly takes a lot less time from the staff that are having to deal with the developers and walk them through it. And also it brings our zoning into form with how we've looked at the master plans over the years for Londonderry, where we want our commercial industry to be, where we want to preserve open space and preserve the rural,
So there's going to be a
bedroom
really good
neighborhoods.
payback on this as far as like staff time is concerned.
Absolutely,
For one.
absolutely.
And that's great. We can free them up to do other things.
Yeah, and again, it helps move Londonderry forward. I hear from developers very frequently when they go into towns, and it's just a maze to walk through their zoning codes. I had one just talking to me recently about Manchester, and they said Manchester's is just a mess the way it's currently set up and designed. And so this, as I said, it will simplify a lot of things within our zoning code, and it's long overdue.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you're looking at that. Okay, we're really a little bit out of time here, but I just want you to quickly tell us where you think the budget is at this time and how people can find out what's going on moving forward.
Yeah, we're going to have our first public hearing on the budget on December 22nd. That's a Monday evening. There's 2 public hearings on the budget before it's entirely set, and then before the deliberative session. So if people want to voice their opinions on things they want to see happen with our budget, those public hearings would be the time to do that.
And is the budget on the website?
The budget is on the website.
Okay, so they can
The
take a look.
proposed budget is on the website under town documents.
Okay.
People can go in and check that out. It's, you know, we're in the default budget process now that we've been in for the last few years once we started doing ballot voting. So it streamlines the process in some sense, and there isn't as much variables that maybe we dealt with in the past with the budgeting process. Nonetheless, there's still a few things on the table that need to be decided on by the town council.
And we'll talk about that some more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so people go on the website, look at the budget, see what you think. We've really kind of talked ourselves over what we said was our time limit. Luckily, this is Access Television, so we don't have a real time limit. But there are just a couple more things that I want to say to wrap up, and one of them is I am hoping that we see our town council chair back in business pretty quickly. He had an injury a few weeks ago, and we wish him all the best, especially in this season. We don't want him going out and putting out any Christmas lights this year. So we look forward to seeing him come back.
Kate sold all of his ladders, I'm told, so.
That's good. So we wish him all the best. I'd also like to mention that here at the Access Center on December 13th, Saturday, they are continuing the tradition of Christmas Live. So bring your kids down. A lot of you I know were on that when you were kids. Some of them might even have grandchildren now. So bring the grandchildren, bring the children, bring everybody, and come and see Santa. I understand that Santa is just so anxious to see all of his little Londonderry friends, and maybe talk to them about what they've been doing and, you know, how they can look at what they're going to get under the tree this year. So have those kids make the list and bring them down Saturday the 13th between 1 and 3 p.m. And I would like to also encourage all of you, if you have anything that you do want to talk about or questions that you want to ask, you can send those to me or to the Access Center. The contact information is at the end of the program. There'll be contact information for the town manager. Of course, the police chief is always accessible. And the website, I just have to say, the website is being updated on a constant basis. I really feel it's a wonderful tool now for us to use, because you got a question, you can go on there, and 9 times out of 10 you either get the answer or find exactly the person who can give you the answer. So I want to thank you both for being here. There are some other things that we thought we were going to talk about, but I don't want to go too far over here because I know you both have other lives that you're leading besides the life of a TV star. So thank you very much. Was it painless, Bill?
Oh, it was absolutely
Okay,
painless. Enjoyed it
because we
very
want the
much.
other
Thanks.
department heads to know that and keep coming in with you. And Kevin, I want to thank you for being so open about what's going on in town. I think
pleasure.
it can always only be helpful
I
and
agree.
make people feel more pride in their town because they understand the things that are going on.
Can I make one clarification?
What did I say?
The gas pipeline is a
Oh.
30-inch pipe, not a 30-foot pipe.
Well, you know something? I was thinking that's a lot of pipe.
You could ride your bike through that
Yeah.
pipe.
Well, I was
And
thinking,
that's a lot of natural gas.
when
That's only like a check mark, you know.
when Kevin said it was a 36-foot pipe, I was concerned that a gaggle of geese
Yes.
could fly through it.
Well, I thank you both for being here. And I have to thank our little guests down here, too, for being quiet for the remainder of the show, minus a sneezing fit and a little barking. And I hope that you will join us the next time, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.